Hey everybody, what's going on and thing? And we're back with another video, and this one is called Date That Changed Scotland, John Knox and the Scottish Reformation. Yes, let's see what date is it that changed Scotland. Welcome to Mr. Giant Reacts a Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Giant. Without any further ado, let's get into this video here.
Hey, it's the 11th of May. I want to tell you about one of the key dates in Scottish history. And if you stick with me till the end, I'll help you plan one of those historic days out in Scotland.
Let's see it. Let's get it.
Hiya, I'm Bruce Fumi from Scotland History Tours. If you're interested in the people, events and places in Scottish history, and you want some great ideas about places to visit in Scotland, then subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the notification bell. That way you'll be notified every time I make a new YouTube video. In the meantime, let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
When tourists come to Scotland, the churches that they flock to are St Giles Cathedral and Roslin Chapel. Now both are fantastic, but if you're talking Scottish history, then this is the place to be. This is St John's Kirk in my hometown of Perth. It's the most prominent building in Perth. It's the oldest building in Perth. Indeed, it's from this building that the town previously got its name, of St John's Town. Our football team still called St John's. And let me tell you why. It's not only the most significant church in Perth, but possibly the most significant church in Scotland. Now, if you're wondering why, in a time where people don't go to church anymore but they watch Netflix, that's even relevant, then give me 10 minutes of your time and it'll be clear.
Alright, let's go.
Sorry about that, I had to deal with the skeptics. Okay, so we need to talk about John Knox. Now when you think about John Knox, you probably think about a big, beardy, blood and thunder, misogynistic, world-changing, Mary Queen of Scots hating, preachy guy. He was actually much more than that. He was a school teacher, bodyguard, galley slave, rioter, politician, and he had an English accent. You didn't see that coming, did you?
No.
If you've got any other dirty secrets about John Knox, then please feel free to put them in the comment section below. Now, in the 21st century, there are John Knox Presbyterian churches around the world. So why is this church so important? It's because of events that happened in this day in Scottish history. Now, a wee bit of background to the Scottish Reformation. I suppose you could say that it all started with an English invasion. I knew they'd be through this. Anyway, bear with me.
You know, something that people get mixed up is the Scottish, Irish, and British accents. There's distinct differences. You know what I mean? The Scottish seems to roll the town a little bit more. And of course, too, some people even get the Australian and the New Zealand accent mixed up in all of them. I guess because of it's the same colonized, same, that one country colonized all of those to a certain degree. But and I'll be honest with you, at first I couldn't tell, you know what I mean? And if somebody said they're from Scotland, I expected a British accent and stuff. I mean, I've grown to understand that it's different, you know what I mean, over the years. But still today, we have an Australian guy that comes through the store, and people are always like, his British accent is so nice. And I said, that's not a British accent, that's an Australian accent. And so people still can't tell the difference in thing. I only thought about that because he mentioned that John Knox had a British accent.
You thought it was me, it was my reflection. So, you probably all know that James V of Scotland died 6 days after the birth of his only daughter, Mary Queen of Scots, leaving his wife, Marie de Guise, a widow. Now the baby's great uncle, Henry VIII, wanted her to marry his son, her cousin, Edward. In Scotland at the time, there were two opposing factions: a Protestant sympathising pro-English group and a Catholic sympathising.
You know, before you continue, it seems like it was prevalent that people would marry their cousin and stuff in those times. Nowadays, it seems like it's a big no-no. Where I live here, one of the things that one of the disparaging remarks about the area that I live is that people marry their cousins and stuff and all of that here, you know, and I mean, it's like a big shame for people here, you know what I mean? But then again, they live in small communities, so isn't that sort of bound to happen, especially if they live in these small communities? And these days, there are so many people, like around here, and it might be the same way elsewhere, but I'm speaking for around here because I see it every day. There's so many women having children by the same dude, and a lot of those children don't know their siblings. It's bound to happen unknowingly. Now, in some cases it happened knowingly. I wonder when it became faux pas for somebody to marry their cousins, and if that's the case, was it faux pas for poor people then, but okay for rich people back then, so that they could keep the wealth within the family?
Pro-French group. And with the pro-French group in the ascendancy, it was agreed that Mary would go off and marry the Dauphin of France. Well, Henry VIII went mental, and he invaded Scotland to get Mary to marry his son. I don't know if you know this, Henry was an ancestor of Harvey Weinstein. This period in Scotland is called the Rough Wooing. And during this period, the English occupied areas of lowland Scotland, and they started to distribute Bibles and Protestant literature, because the English had already become Protestant so that Henry could marry Anne Boleyn. In the meantime, French troops occupied Edinburgh to defend against the English. Now, the tension between the French troops and ordinary Scots will become a problem later. At the time, Catholic priests were rubbish, and people weren't attending Mass. That made for fruitful ground for the reformers. A few Protestant martyrs later, we ended up with an event in St Andrews that I hope to cover in a week or two. This event led to John Knox spending time as a galley slave, then studying John Calvin in Switzerland. But for this point, now he was back. Now, 4 reformist preachers north of Perth in Dundee, Angus and Kincardineshire have been summoned to trial in Stirling. The reason? Over Easter, they'd administered the sacrament in a manner not approved by the Catholic Church. Probably they'd done it in English rather than Latin, because you know how much God hates that. Now the trial was set for the 10th of May. John Knox had landed back in Scotland in Leith on the 2nd.
So, because on the island, when I was really young, some of the priests did do Latin parts of sermons, or whatever they want to call them, preaching or whatever. So, if I'm not mistaken, what he said is that if they didn't do it in Latin, these 2 guys were being prosecuted or charged for doing it in English.
Of me, screaming serendipitous sacrilege, Batman. You know there's going to be trouble. A bunch of Protestants headed towards Stirling for the trial, but they stopped here in Perth. Now Perth was a walled city. In fact, these here are the last remnants of those city walls across the road from Perth Museum. Effectively, this energised Protestant mob came to Perth ready for a siege. And when the accused didn't turn up for trial in Stirling, they were outlawed. News of this got back to Perth on this day in Scottish history as John Knox preached a sermon on idolatry and the cleansing of the temple in St John's Kirk. Now, unveiled an ornate altar in order to take mass. A young lad uttered an exclamation of indignation. Uttered an exclamation of indignation? I'm no joking. Well, the priest hit the boy with a stick, the boy threw a stone at the priest, all hell broke loose, the mob tore down and smashed all the statues, they spilled out of this door and sacked the monasteries in Perth. This spread across central Scotland. The Protestants who occupied Perth negotiated a truce with Marie de Guise, who was obviously acting as regent for her daughter, Mary Queen of Scots. But when French troops, remember them, entered the town, it made things worse. There were more confrontations and manoeuvrings. Marie fortuitously died, and the Protestant lords of the congregation took over. Just over a year after the sermon here, Scotland was officially a Protestant country. Now, John Knox wanted a school in every parish so that patrons and plebs could learn to read the Bible together. Scotland became the world's first literate country. This led to the Scottish Enlightenment. Adam Smith built the foundations of modern economic theory, the capitalist system in which we currently live. David Hume built the foundations of modern philosophy, and his ideas fed the American Revolution. Because of the educated, literate nature of the Scottish population, that they disproportionately administered the British Empire and a quarter of the world's population. Scots invented or discovered the telephone, television, penicillin, and many other things that are essential parts of everyday life today. The new Presbyterian Church created in this Reformation eschewed, that's right, I used that word, eschewed, top-down governance, and insisted that the ministers who led the church and the elders who administered the church were elected. Yes, that's right, modern-day democracy. For all our faults, and we have many, Scotland built the modern world, and it started in this church on the 11th of May, 1559.
Wow!
I hope you enjoyed that.
Oh yeah.
Even you, Mr. Skeptic. If you did, please give me the...
Okay. No, I'm telling you, man, that was quite interesting there. You know what I mean? Nobody really pays attention to Scotland and as much as their contribution to the world, you know, in general. I guess it's because of being sort of colonized to a certain degree. The colonizers usually take credit for things that happen, you know, or things that were invented. It's kind of like the old artists and stuff, you know, who had, oh man, what do they call them? Pretty much interns, apprentices. And some of the apprentices did the painting. But the artists, the famous artists, took credit for it. Like a lot of that was happening during all the times when art was popular. And, you know, artists were considered like Hollywood stars, you know, of the time, you know. So it's kind of like the same thing where, you know, all these great ideas came from these little colonies, but the colonizers usually take credit for it simply because in order for the people from the places that were colonized to get ahead, they have to go to the places that colonized them to get the education and all of that. But by the way he's speaking, Scotland made everybody literate, and then a lot of things evolved from there. Oh, that was quite interesting there. I'm glad I watched this one here, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. And comment down below. Tell me what you all think about that. You know what I mean? That's why it's so important to like watch the history of all these places that nobody ever really speaks about, because you learn things that they contribute to the history of humankind. You understand? I don't want to say mankind, I say humankind and thing. But I'll leave a link in the description to this video, you know what I mean? And check this guy's channel out. He's got some great stuff on Scotland and all of that, you know, places to travel and visit and thing. And boy's trying to call a brother, you know, interrupting me and thing, you know. But anyway, and drop a like on the video if you enjoyed, you know what I mean? And hope you guys are taking care of each other, all right? Cool runnings.